Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. On the first half, we dealt with situations in Lesotho where parliamentary elections, a new party revolution for change has won majority of the seats in Lesotho. And now we switch over in Chad, where Chad's military transition leader, Mahamat Idriss Deby, has been officially sworn in as the country's transitional president. Now, General Mahamat Idriss Deby, who was sworn in 18 months after his father was killed, took oath of office in a televised ceremony in the capital in Jamina on Monday. Now, on Saturday, the ceremony boycotted by opposition members, leading armed rebel groups and civil society organizations. Chad's National Forum formally dissolved the Transitional Council that had governed the country for 18 months and announced that Mahamat Idriss Deby Itno, who took over in April last year after his father's demise, would remain in power during a 2-year transition to democracy. Under the new resolutions in the revised transition charter adopted by the forum, Deby is also eligible to vie for the presidency after the transition. And joining us for this conversation, we have Achike Chude, is a global affairs analyst. We also have Kunle Falowo, is a global affairs analyst, and also Ndolembai Njesada, vice president of the Transformers Party in Chad. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. All right, wonderful. Thanks. So I'll begin with you, Achike. It's been an 18-month political transition led by Mahamat Idriss Deby. It was supposed to end this month. Why do you think this transition period extended?
The whole thing has always been dependent on the wishes of the members of the junta who took over power. From the father of, Deby, that is the later Idriss Deby. Obviously, ECOWAS has been involved in the transition program, trying to get the junta to live up to their words. But this is, so what we're seeing, this extension of the transition by 2 more years after they had agreed 18 years at the initial stage, is in the line of, the junta and the way we have, military juntas like, Chad have behaved across the African continent. They lost for power. It is never about the people, about the Chadian people, but about the wishes of the junta. Sometimes, when they give these dates, they think that the dates will never come, that the day when they would hand over power will never come. But they just, all of a sudden, it's 18 months, and then they realize that they have to leave power. Then they begin to cook up all manners of scheme. And this is what they have exactly done. And it is the same thing. I think they are borrowing a leaf from what is happening in Guinea, where Guinea set up, a national conference kind of, so that, on the basis that the national conference is going to take a decision on what is going to happen with the transitional program in Guinea. So it's about buying time. And so the junta in Chad, is trying to buy time for themselves to remain in power, obviously. And then, but again, what they have done is also to ensure that this conference that brought about this result of extending Deby's stay in power, also ensures that Deby, even after the 2-year transitional period is over, that he will now also be eligible to run for government. And of course, we understand the implications of that.
All right, let's hear from Kunle. Now, you've talked about these intentions by the military junta, and in a way, they try to extend their stay in power. And this is what Mahamat has also done. Now, earlier he promised not to vie for the presidential position. I do not want to assume what your position is, Kunle, but what do you think led to this change? Because he promised that he would not vie. He has led an 18-month transition period. So why would he still vie for presidential position when this election supposedly comes 2 years from now?
Thanks for having me. So going back to, in response to your question, we have to understand the antecedent. The antecedent basically is his father took over power in that in Chad, and it's been ongoing. It's been 30 years that he's been, being in that position. And they had a referendum in 2005 that extended the, his ability to also contest for another election, which he did. So if we look at the antecedent, these sets of men that are power intoxicated and they really don't want to leave power. So he pretty much would continue to carry on where his father, stopped from. And the only reason that his father is not available currently is because he was killed during the time where, I think April last year, when he went to visit the military officials that was fighting in the northern part of the country, and that led to where we are today. But nonetheless, this is a situation that is just continuing, and it's really, really very sad.
All right, we also have with us Ndolembai. Now, Ndolembai, you're the vice president of Transformers Party, and there has been a lot of criticisms with the national dialogue over inclusivity, especially with the absence of opposition parties and 2 out of 3 army groups and even civil society organizations. What is your position, the party's position, on this new role of Idriss Deby to go for another term, transition term, and extending the transition period for another 2 years? What is your party's position on this?
Thank you for the opportunity, and I would like to restate our will, our desire, and the desire of the people of Chad, which is justice and equality. We have been fighting for justice and equality since the inception of our political party in 2018. And as my predecessor has said earlier, there have been many dialogues that happened in Chad since Deby father to Deby son. Deby father has held the first dialogue in 1993. And then in 2018, they did another dialogue. And during that dialogue, they were saying that Chad is a perfect country. We don't need prime minister. We don't need anybody else but President Deby to be the only one who can lead this country to its final destiny. In 2020, they came back with another dialogue saying that, okay, let's revise this and create a position for a vice president. And during that period of time, we were saying that Deby can no longer run for presidency because he has took power since 1990. It's been 32 years running that he's been a president. And during his 6th mandate, we were asking him, why can you convince the people of the purpose of your running? Because for 30 years, you have been failing the people of Chad. So what else have you not done that you think you could do? He resisted, and we went against him by defying him democratically. And then the FACT rebel group have took over also by fighting, where he ended up dying on April 2021 in the field of battle. Then miraculously, we have another Deby in power. And this Deby, when he came, we told him that in order for this country to stand strong, both opposition and leading party has to sit and agree on a certain number of things. And the 2 major things that we should agree upon in order to save this country is called justice and equality for all, because this military country is being run by a family member, by cousins, by nephew, by brother. And the majority of Chadens have been outside, have been chastised of the ruling team. So at the beginning of this transition, the military team of the 15 members have said by the end of the 18 months, which is October 20th, 2022, they will hand over the power to the civilian in order to organize the rest of the transition to end up with an election. However, they put a play. I call it a play. It's not a dialogue. It's more of a monologue, because this dialogue that had happened did not meet the stated goal of inclusivity and of representativity, because we as the Transformer have not been part of it. The reason we have not been part of it is simply because we requested a parity. And when we talk about dialogue, we need to have 2 different antagonists who do not agree on a certain number of things to sit and discuss, and both sides have to do some concession in order to come to a common point and then move forward. However, being the head of the junta, he hand cherry-picked who should be in that room for the dialogue. And at the last minute, asking us to come and be an assistant to this dialogue in order for it to validate another transition for him, which is something we completely disagree, and we did hold to our promises. And this has happened in a way that not only us, but those who hesitated, who went to that room, walked out and joined us and saying that the dialogue that was supposed to happen is not happening the way it's supposed to be. And the Catholic churches have boycotted the dialogue as well. And at the end of the dialogue, at the end of the monologue, they decided to extend the transition for another 24 months and nominate him as the head of the transition. I believe, as a military man, once you say something, you stand by what you said because you are not a politician, you are a military. He said by the end of the 18 months, which is October 20th, he will hand the power to the civilians, regardless of what is suggested to him during that dialogue time. He would have said, in order to be a man of his word, say, I will respectfully not accept being the head of the transition post 18 months. But yet, he just showed today in the face of the whole world that he is continuing to be the head of the country for the next 24 months. This is what happened.
All right, and Ndolembai, sorry to cut you in there. Now, your party has talked about this dialogue being a monologue, and you boycotted it due to the fact that you're not happy with the way the whole monologue, as you say, is going on. Now, Deby has been sworn in despite all this. What is the next move for the opposition parties in Chad? Are they just going to sit comfortably with it? Because he has said that he's going to go in for another 2 years, and he would even contest in the presidential elections. What are opposition parties going to do at this point?
This is exactly what I'm going to. By giving you this background, this is where we are heading. The Transformateurs have also organized a dialogue of the people while they were opening the dialogue on August 20th. We had over 150,000 people out doing the dialogue with people while they have 1,500 people in a small room trying to do their monologue. And what we have said on that day, we say by October 20th, we are hoping that our road will cross, meaning that the two dialogue will sit together and come up with a new roadmap for the future of Chad. In case those who are doing the monologue continue in the way they're doing, the opposition party, Les Transformateurs and their allies, will also form their government by October 20th. And we stand by that. By October 20th, if this current government that is being led by Mahamat Idriss Deby Itno did not agree on some of the conditions that we put on the table, which is justice and equality for all, then we are in the obligation to create a parallel government. And on top of that, we are calling each and every partner of the country of Chad to make their choice. And as you can see, some of them, as like African Union, have decided to boycott the investiture and have come up with some announcements saying that they do not agree with what's going on. And the European Union have done so, the American have done so, the British have done so. But one thing to remember, that the problem of Chadian will be resolved by Chadians. Regardless of what the international community is saying, we are standing by the justice for all, we're standing for unity, for equality for all, and most above all things, we are listening to the voice of the Chadians, the voice of the people, because democracy in itself is the power of the people, by the people, and for the people. But as of today, Chad is being run by a group of people who represent less than 1% of the population and who think they can speak in the name of the whole country. Cousins and brothers and nephews are talking in the name of the country, while the majority of the people of Chad are still living in the condition that are despicable. We are regressing in democracy in Chad. So for us, we have 12 days ahead of us to believe that we will be able to cross our roads and come up with a new way of power sharing and lead this country to a new direction. Otherwise, there will definitely be two governments in this country by October 20th.
Okay, thank you so much, Ndolembai. I would like to get a response from Achike. Achike, Ndolembai has rightly revealed that there's been an October 20 mandate against the military junta, which has failed to live up to his words of saying that of an 18-month transition period and even extending transition period to a further 2 years. Now, he also mentioned the international organizations. Now, in fostering democracy in Chad, do you think that the international pressure has been enough to push for democratic change, or would you think that they're actually complicit in this military junta's mandate?
Well, let me just start by saying, making reference to what my brother from Chad has said, rightly anyway, that much more is expected of military people because they are not politicians. But unfortunately, we have had periods of military rule across the African continent. We've had our fair share of military rule in Nigeria. And we know that over time, the military has lost its professionalism and have become political. So the military institutions have become politicized in Africa. Whether you have military dictatorship in place, or whether you have civilian administrations in place, some of the atrocities that have been committed by the civilians we are committed with the help of the military leadership in those countries where these atrocities were committed. So it's not the kind of military that we actually expect, the kind of discipline that characterizes the military. But you are now talking about the international pressure. Obviously, it's not about international pressure alone. The international pressure we have to sync with what you have on the ground. And like my brother has said, obviously the Chadian people are not going to take this line low. So there must be a two-pronged, approach to this issue. And that is, the international angle, the international pressure being, in support of what happens at the local level and domestic level, where the Chadian people themselves have to wear, bear the gauntlet. Because if there's any group that has the biggest stake in what happens in Chad, it is the people of Chad, it is their country, ultimately. And so they are either going to be victims or they are going to be beneficiaries of the kind of political system that they allow to be in place. So that is what I expect. But beyond that, again, we will also expect a fight back from the military junta because they are there to protect their interest. And if they cannot do it peacefully, they are going to do it violently. And so you're going to expect a period of oppression of the people of Chad by the military junta just to remain in power. But I believe that in the international community, especially ECOWAS, because the international community has been working a lot with ECOWAS, they are the regional government. And what we are now seeing at the international level is that even at the level of United Nations, the Commonwealth countries, of African Union, they tend to want to work with the regional, political grouping. And in this case, that is the ECOWAS. So we expect that the right kind, and the reason why they did this is that they felt that ECOWAS was not going to do anything, that the international community was not going to act in an assertive manner. But the good thing is that the Chadians themselves are the people that are saying we are not going to accept this. Wow. So for as long as the Chadians themselves are not going to accept this, they're going to find that have an international community that will be ready to side with them, in order to ensure that this 2-year transition program is not going to stand.
Okay, Achike, I'd like to start with you. You talked about the assertiveness of the regional body. And, ECOWAS and AU, they have been questioned on this, on putting governments to place, especially when coups happen. Now, you're a Nigerian, and we know that the Nigerian president also went for the swearing-in ceremony of Idriss Deby Itno. I mean, what can we read from this? I mean, why would presidents go for the swearing-in of a military junta, of which the Chad people and the opposition parties have complained that he promised an 18-month transition, but yet he has extended it?
Well, it's also part of the contradiction. The reality is that we are running a foreign policy. Sometimes, yes, we have an Afrocentric foreign policy, but sometimes our political leaderships make mistakes. And I think with, this is obviously, a very big mistake. For an ECOWAS that in which this president has played a very prominent part. Don't forget that he appointed Jonathan Goodluck, as one of the key people that was involved in the discussions to try to ensure smooth transitions to democracy back from military dictatorship across the West African sub-region. You had his involvement in Burkina Faso, in Guinea, in Niger, and I mean some of these other places. And so, you do not want a president that will, give the wrong kind of signals. Obviously, I think he was, also precipitate in getting involved, because you see his presence would only go. And don't forget that Nigeria is a very big country in Africa, and not just in Africa. In Africa, more so the West African sub-region, where we play a major role. In fact, let me just say that the reason why some of these coups are taking place in West Africa, essentially because Nigeria, is weak. Nigeria is not what Nigeria was years ago when we boldly went into Sierra Leone to restore that country to democracy, boldly played a major role, at the risk of losing Nigerian lives of Nigerian military personnel in Liberia, and brought stability to that country. And so perhaps I think they're also taking advantage of the fact that some of the countries within the West African region are also beset with myriads of socioeconomic, crisis. And that is why some of these people feel that they can actually do this without anybody, any other country challenging them.
Okay, Achike, just hold on a bit. I want to get Kunle's thoughts on this. And you talked about the reasons why there's been a bit of lopsidedness or a layback from the regional bodies, ECOWAS. And Chad has been one of the more capable counterterrorism forces. You talked about socio-economic crisis, which the West African bodies are also facing. Now, terrorism is what West African countries are facing. In Nigeria, Boko Haram has bedeviled most of the northern parts. And the region is battling both the Islamic extremist forces. Now, is there some form of reluctance to push for democratic reforms because of what they're gaining from Chad, Kunle? All right, well, we seem to have lost Kunle there. I would do hope to get him back. But Achike, I don't know if you could share light on this before I go to Ndolembai.
So, sorry, what was the question again?
We're looking at what African countries are gaining, and we're looking at counterterrorism. And Chad has been one of the more capable counterterrorism forces in the region. Is that a reason why it's more like we're dependent on this country? Achike, can you hear me?
Perhaps, yes, I can hear you. Yeah, perhaps a little bit of that, because, the fact that ECOWAS has shown a great reluctance in actually being very decisive against some of these, rogue regimes. I'll use that expression because, military dictatorship is an aberration. The fact that they seem to have tolerated them to a very large extent is also essentially a recognition of some of the, this particular issue you have raised, that is the issue of terrorism. Because obviously terrorism has been causing a lot of, serious, problem, within, the West African regional corridor. And so, part of even the reason for some of the incursions by the military is that they have accused the civilian.
Now, we're looking at counter-terrorism being one of the reasons why there's been a layback from the regional bodies. I don't know, in Ndolembai, what do you see to this? Do you see a lot of support from regional bodies, the ECOWAS and the AU, in trying to make sure that there's a proper democratic transition of administration in Chad? Do you see their support?
It is important to have a proper democratic transition in Chad, and that's what we've been fighting for. Many of us who do not agree into this democratic way of fighting for democracy have chosen arms like the fight to fight. But we have chosen the fight of ideas and ideologies. And that's why we're suggesting in our plan multiple projects to allow us to have a peaceful transition that none of us will lose their faces. And unfortunately, this is not being seen the same way with those who are leading the country. But for partners countries with Chad regarding the security, especially the Boko Haram or the jihadist group, it's been the last decade, the Chadian military has been used as a shield for fights against military. Let's use, for example, a country like Nigeria. I think I read a couple of years ago that the number of military in Nigeria is about 12 million. I might be mistaken, but that's almost the population of Chad. And imagine that for the fights against Boko Haram, the Chadian military are so involved that Nigeria should not be depending on Chad to contain this military, jihadist group. Okay. However, since Chad military is a family military and it's being used as a source of funding and getting support from the international community for their own benefit, then they put themselves forth. Like in Mali, they went there. And what's happening in Mali right now? They did not hold up.
Okay. Ndolembai, sorry to cut you up due to time. I want to quickly get from Kunle. You talk about the effort that Chad has placed in countering terrorism in the West African region and even the functions of ECOWAS and AU. Kunle, this new junta leader, of course, he has been there for about 18 months. He has promised a second phase of transition and unity. Now, Ndolembai mentioned that there would be a parallel government if he fails to listen to their demands, which is justice and equity. What do you think happens next?
Great question. So I want to refer back to what one of the my brother just rightly mentioned about intervening and creating a parallel government just in case everything goes south, or if Deby does not honor his decision afterwards. I would strongly recommend that it should be gone or done in a peaceful means. because at the end of the day, it's a small country, relatively small country compared to a country like Nigeria. The people would suffer, and a lot of people will tend to lose their lives because the military are the ones in the helms of affairs, and they're willing to die for their cause, either unjust or not, or either just or not. But the thing, though, is it has to be done in a democratic, a civil manner that is going to not encourage bloodshed. Having said that, another means where the military people in charge right now could be pressured to honor their decision at the end of the day would be in a national intervention. And how does that happen? We recognize that Chad has petroleum. They have crude oil. They have uranium, which it's used to fuel nuclear plants and also do nuclear get nuclear energy and whatnot. And these are the things that needs to be done.
A lot of things. A lot of things, Kunle. You've mentioned international pressure. You've talked for a civil way back to democratic transition. But we do hope for the best. And of course, we'll still keep on our gaze on what is going on in Chad and even the plans for the parallel government if Mahamat Idriss Deby Itno fails to deliver what the opposition parties are asking for. Thank you so much, Achike, Chude, Kunle, Falowo, and Ndolembai in Njesada. We also wish the best in Chad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this is where we'll wrap up today's edition of The Conversation. I am Rita Omodia. Do join us again on Wednesday for another edition of The Conversation. Bye-bye.